Hello everyone and welcome back to ChelsChat. I'm JB and I'm with Moose. Today we're going to talk about the season restart. Going to have a little conversation about the Zola comments this week about Sarri's season. And we're going to go through the Abramovic team of the era. So Max, season coming back 17th of June, first game is going to be played. What's your thoughts?
I'm very excited. I mean, as much as I've been loving watching the Bundesliga, it's not the same. I mean, firstly, the Bundesliga, there's no atmosphere, which I'm hoping they're going to fix something before they bring back the Premier League, because it's a bit of a... it's a bit flat. It's like watching a Power League. I think we said that in previous thing. It's like watching a Power League and sort of in training. But I have missed the Premier League. Having something to look forward to, making sure my fantasy team points go high.
If anyone who doesn't know Max, what Max basically does is he waits for whoever's doing well in the league, and then he'll copy their team.
All I want to say, guys, is I'm a successful fantasy football player. Managed sort of. I've brought in the Jose Mourinho tactics to fantasy football, and that's why I'm successful. There's just some bitter people like JB who just can't fathom why I'm so successful.
Shocking.
But I think for me, watching the game again, being able to sort of that weekend feeling of sort of match of the day, be able to actually watch it. I mean, not being able to go and visit is going to be a bit of a thing. Not that I get to see that many games live that much, but being able to sort of watch it is going to be key. And it's going to be interesting, I think. We've got, 9 games left, currently sitting 4th. It's going to be interesting because there's been so much talk of, will we just end the season? Will we just will we just pause it? Will we take points per game? How is that going to play out? And all of that's looking favourably, and now it's back in the balance. Not sure how a lot of clubs, not just Chelsea, are going to come back. You've got certain clubs coming back a bit stronger, maybe some clubs coming back a bit weaker. It might be weird because there's a lot of clubs. We're without a few players. Someone like Kante, big miss for us. He is unlikely to play. I think you've got teams like Troy Deeney in Watford not going to be able to play. But then you've got teams like Spurs who aren't too far behind us. They came back. You've got United equally behind us, bringing back Rashford. So teams that looked like they were down and out might sort of be able to chase us or give us a run for our money, depending on how well they come back in, what sort of form they come in. And then I'll run a games. I'll let you run through some of these, but it's an interesting run. I mean, 2 very difficult ones, possible of 27 points to take.
Yeah.
We're currently only 3 points ahead of United and 5 points behind Leicester. But it's going to be all to play for, I think.
So looking for the points. I mean, we're on 48. United are on 45. Then you've got Wolves and Sheffield United both on 43. Spurs 41. Arsenal, don't really count them as challengers for top 4, but they're on 40, so they're 8 points behind. But they have 10 games to play, Arsenal. Our fixtures. I mean, we've got Villa away to start off with. Then it's back to it. City at home. West Ham away. Watford at home. Palace away. Sheffield United away. Norwich at home. Liverpool away. And Wolves at home. So not only have we got some tough games, we've got quite a lot of away games as well. But I think that could kind of play in our favour, because it doesn't seem that home advantage, when you look at the Bundesliga, isn't playing as much of a role in the results. I do feel a bit nervous about our chances of top 4, because it's just that there's no form book anymore. There's no injuries have kind of recovered. Even you look down to Spurs with 41 points. They're 7 behind us, but they've got their star man back in Harry Kane. How's he going to influence things? And it's, I mean, United had just kind of got on a roll when the games had finished. So are they going to pick up where they left off? Is it going to take them a little while to get back to where they were? It's the same with everyone, really. You just don't know. It's almost like the start of a new season, except you've got 9 games and people have already got points. So where do you go from there? It's almost impossible to predict. The only thing that we can really predict is that Liverpool are going to win the league.
I mean, that's the only thing that is really sort of gut-wrenching, is that they're going to have to win the league. And to be honest, as a Chelsea fan, no one's ever going to give it to them properly.
No.
That's a hollow victory, no matter what.
It does make me happy to know that they won't lift it in front of their own fans at the very least.
It's the only thing that keeps me sane at night. But I think sort of if I look at the running games, as you say, it is like starting the season again. I mean, we're fortunate we've got pretty much a full squad back. We've got some injuries that we've had. Tammy come back, which was worrying because Giroud wasn't a proper out-and-out striker that you could play 90 minutes. But then losing someone like Kante is pretty big, even though I know we've got quite a bloated midfield anyway. And knowing he's on the pitch is going to be big. And whether they will bring him back in at any point is sort of, I think they'll probably want to keep him off the pitch.
I think we kind of lost him for quite a lot of the season already anyway. I mean, he was injured for a lot of it. He did come in and play a big part in some of the games, but he was missing again for quite a lot of the season. So I think it's not going to affect us too badly in terms of him not being there from where we were.
Yeah.
But he's still a big miss in the team. But yeah, as you said, we've got Jorginho, Kovacic, Mount, Loftus-Cheek, Gilmore, Barkley. So we've got 6 other players in that position. So yes, he's one of the best, but we do have other options.
And I think sort of it's right that you mentioned some of the other players in there, because I think Kovacic has had an absolutely outstanding season. I think we mentioned it in the last podcast and YouTube video that you called him out as our player of the season. We've also got a run of 9 games that might influence our player of the season that encapsulates the whole season. And I think you've got players in there that will be chomping at the bit. You've got players like Gilmore that I think could come in and become a mainstay, if I'm going to be honest. He looks like that player's got that energy. And I think he could play well in partnership with a Kovacic and a Mason Mount style player. I think you're going to see Jorginho start with him coming on off the bench. But, I mean, if I look at our run of games, you've got Aston Villa start with away. And I don't think the home advantage counts, as you say, too much anymore. I'd be disappointed if we didn't get 3 points from that. I mean, I think we might get a point at worst case, and I'd be really disappointed if we lost, because I don't see Aston Villa really playing as a club that's going to. They're sort of near the relegation zone. They've not been amazing this season. I think they've had a couple of players who've had standout performances, but I don't think you've got an amazing team that's maybe going to last more than 1 or 2 seasons in the Premier League, depending on if they keep some of that talent. So
they had a few injuries as well. They've had quite a few of their big players, that some of their players injured as well. So, I mean, they could be stronger than they were, but I'd still agree with you that we should really get the 3 points from that game for sure.
And then we go to City at home. And it's still not been confirmed whether these will all be played at neutral grounds. That's still not been even though there's only a couple of weeks until the actual games start, that's not been confirmed yet. And I guess
there was a couple that they were touting, wasn't there? I think it was more like big derbies. So like the Liverpool-Everton, as I said, derby. For us, I would imagine the West Ham game would be a potential one to as a neutral. I know they were touting one of our games. I didn't see which one, but I would assume it's the West Ham game.
Probably. And so I think sort of obviously hosting City at the Bridge. I think City are interesting ones. They haven't really got much to play for in the title. Liverpool have tied that way before this. You've had a few players that have had issues during the crisis. So Kyle Walker being one. I don't know how much they've got to play for. I think sort of they'd be disappointed if they dropped to third. They potentially aren't going to get Europe anyway next season. It's gone all very quiet during COVID. So I think that's ours to win. Whether we will is another question. They've got a great squad. But I'm sort of thinking at least a point from that game.
Yeah, I'd take a draw for sure in that. I think the quality they have, whether they're at the races or not, they can always punish you. And I mean, you look at when we went to their place, we played well. We played very well, but they still managed to get the points. So, and we even went 1-0 up in that game. So if we could get a point, nick a point there, then I think we'd be in good stead.
And to that point as well, equally, they've had a very poor defensive record this season. So not having Laporte back in, I don't know if he's going to be back by this point, but you can only imagine that's going to improve their standings in the defensive realm rather than. But if we sort of take that as best case scenario, for me, I think we can both agree we'd love to get 3 points from the Aston Villa game. I think we both accept a 1 point, so it's a potential of 4 from the top, both two games, in a realistic sense. For me, West Ham, that could be an interesting game. It's always got a bit of it's got a bit of there'll probably be a few sort of jabs in, but they won't necessarily have the atmosphere of sort of the Olympic Stadium, even though it is quite weird when you go there. I think the same sort of thing as their sort of previous sort of stadium. I've got that's another game I would expect to at least get a point. I'd be disappointed if we didn't get 3.
I think. I mean, they beat us at home earlier in the season. They do have the danger to come at us to cause us problems. But again, I think it is a team we should be beating if we want to finish in the top 4. Then you're going to have to rely on the boys to step up and get the 3 points in those kind of games. Without the crowd there, kind of getting things going, it's a mild derby. It's the players and not the young British lads would probably understand more, but it's not the same as it is for the fans. So without the fans being there, I don't know how much the derby factor is really going to make a difference.
And you bear in mind, so we've both mentioned that we think we'll get 3 points from both the Aston Villa and the West Ham game. Both those clubs are in the bottom 5. So Villa are on 25 points, fighting for relegation. West Ham are on 27, who are in 16th place. So both those are in a risk of going down. So there's a bit more to play for. As much as we've got top 4 to play for. That's a big loss, not only going down into Championship. I don't think there'll be as much money going down into Championship. So it will probably create a much more sense of urgency in the bottom half of the league than it will in the top.
Especially considering, a lot of people might have it in the back of their minds that 5th place could be a Champions League finish because of the City situation. So, even if we dropped points and we fell down and we finished in 5th, we could be playing Champions League next year.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to chance it. I wouldn't want to put my mortgage on it.
The prestige of how well Lampard's done this season, I expect 4th. As much as I wouldn't hold it against him if he didn't, I expect it. It's one of those ones that at the beginning of the season, if you told me I was going to get 4th, I'd have bit your arm off. Now with 9 games left and the potential where we're not going to, we're restarting the season and it be taken from us, that would be gut-wrenching. Especially with a United or a Tottenham taking that spot, that would really be a kick in the teeth. But yeah, I think it's sort of something that not to downplay that you've got West Ham, Watford, Aston Villa, Norwich, all to play, all with something still to compete with. I mean, Villa have only played 28 games, so beating us in the first game back might be
actually, they're playing on the 17th, so our game won't be till the weekend of the 20th. But because of the Carabao Cup final, Villa have to replay their game. I'm not sure who it's against, I can't remember. But so that, to be fair as well, they're going to have played 3 days before anyway, so that could be in our favour in the Villa game as well.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. So after the West Ham game, I mean, I think we both agreed we'd love to sort of beat West Ham.
Yeah.
So I mean, really disappointed they beat us earlier in the season, but to beat them just to make sure we continue our run is really important. Next is Watford, as we said, in the same boat. They are potentially dropping down. They've had a good run of games the second half of the season, but that primarily has been with Troy Deeney at the front.
Yeah.
Depending on whether he plays, I think a lot of players who've come out saying they're not going to play will probably change their minds when they see potential of dropping down or stuff like that. I can see him stepping back in. Whether they can capture that form that they've had, I don't know. It was a great run of form, but when you get that stoppage, it potentially throws that into the bag a bit. I'm not sure about that. Crystal Palace. Now they're in a very strange position that they're 11th. Can't really go much further up.
Yeah, they're probably just on holiday.
Yeah,
not going to come back mentally. Although I think they're that, especially considering their fans are not there. I think that is going to play a big part of it for us. I can't see anything but a Chelsea win here. If we don't beat Palace in an empty stadium, then there's big problems. And we'll steal their kit for next season as well on the way out.
And then Sheffield United away. They've played amazing this season.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That is.
I mean, they've played really well, and I think, to be honest, Sheffield United are going to be in a bit of an advantage here because they were one of those clubs that probably would have been at risk of burnout. A lot of players who not the best known, but have played very, very well last season. Absolutely astonishing what they've done in their first season up. But they were definitely at the risk of burnout. Their squad is not as sort of depth rich as some of the bigger clubs, and they were at risk of that. So it could be an interesting one. Technically away, obviously in front of empty stadium again. So I don't think that necessarily means too much, but it'd be an interesting one. That one, I think, sort of bar the City and the Liverpool game, I'd be expecting 3 points from most of these games. But I think this one is potentially one that you could drop points just because they've been an unknown.
It depends, I think. Like whilst just what you said about, they could have been in burnout, but because we've had the break, maybe they'll come back in the same way. It could be the same with form. They were in good form. They come back, and maybe it won't be the same. Maybe they're going to have dropped a little bit, or they might even have it in the back of their minds. We've had an excellent season, no matter what happens from here. So it could lead to a little bit of complacency on their part. So there's opportunity for us to get something good out of that game, to get the 3 points. It's always a chance, but I'd take a draw at the same time. If I was looking at it now, I'd take a draw. Obviously, at the time, we kind of have a bit more of an idea. You would have had at least 5 or 6 games by that point, so you can have more of an idea of what form's like. But looking at it from now, I would say a point is definitely enough in that one.
Yeah, definitely for that, mate. I think game after that is Norwich, and for me, by this point, we'll know if they're going up or down, or challenging up, or they're definitely going down. In my eyes, I think this is a definite down. They've not had a great season at all. They've had 1 or 2 really sort of great upsets, but nothing better than that. They've managed to sort of upset Liverpool. I believe they did. They didn't upset Liverpool, sorry. Upset City. Had another few good games. But
Spooky power, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he was in my fantasy football at the beginning of the season. He went out pretty quickly after that. But as you say, they had one good player who had a bit of form at the beginning of the season. They have some great talent coming through, but I just don't think they've got the legs for another season in the Premier League, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that would be 3 points as well.
3 points bag there. Liverpool,
It'll be won by then. It's fine. It'll be fine. We've beaten once.
I mean, to me, this is going to be really difficult because this is their penultimate game, being crowned Premier League champions.
But they would potentially, if it was all things normal, that would have been the game they would have been given the trophy because it's their last home game of the season. So we kind of get away with it there. Then we don't have to sit there and watch it. But at the same time, I don't know how they'll do it now because they're not going to do a trophy celebration in front of no one. So, yeah. And I think from experience, from what I remember, the games where it's all wrapped up and the team's just going to lift the trophy, they always seem to struggle in those games because their mind are not on it. So, I mean, that could work against us as well if we might not have that kind of advantage.
It'll also very much depend on where we are, because if we're hitting that 4th, 5th perspective, we've still got something to play for, whereas they haven't.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, they've had it because they're going to win it. I mean, I don't want them to wrap it up at all, but if they're going to do it, then do it before that game so we can go out and play against some of their kids. That would be much appreciated. Yeah,
definitely. And it very much depends on also how many records they could potentially beat, because that's the other thing. Their points are extremely high.
Well, they can't go unbeaten, so
that's the only thing that I was very much against this whole season. It's just making sure they did not only not win a league for so long and win it finally, is making sure they didn't have an unbeaten season or invincible season, because that just would have been painful. And Wolves, I think, sort of another team who are currently 6th. Pretty surprising considering how their season started. They were having a really poor run of games in comparison to the season before. They had an amazing first season back in the Premier League. They're currently 6th, only 5 points behind us. So depending on how well the rest of their run of games are, it could be an important game. I think it's the honest pieces. At the moment, there's 3 points between us and United. I'm not 100% certain on what Leicester's run of games are, but I think they may have tied up the league for their position quite well. But I don't know how many hard games they've got left. I think it's definitely just going to be important around that top four, securing top 4 for us, making sure we don't get 5th and have to weigh on the judgment, because UEFA are notorious for putting weird and wonderful rules that mean certain clubs do get stuff and certain clubs don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we ignore the top 2, 3, what are your thoughts of ideally we finish 4th, maybe 3rd, be amazing. Where do you think there's going to be much movement or change from obviously we don't have crystal ball of where teams are seeing form and stuff like that, but do you think there's going to be much movement and change, and do you reckon there's going to be upsets of people going down that previously weren't? Or
I think for in terms of 4th, I think United probably will still be our main challengers. Potentially Tottenham will come into it because they've got Kane back now, and a few of the other injuries they had will be coming back through. I mean, Wolves and Sheffield United, it's hard to tell still. Because they've just been in good form. So that's why they're doing so well. I would say it's probably between us and United for 4th still. I think the other teams just have a little bit too much to do to get there. I mean, Spurs are 7 points behind us. I think in 9 games to gain 7 points on someone is quite difficult unless we come up and just absolutely mess it up. I mean, going through what we've just discussed, I kind of took a little note down of the points for each game that we kind of. And I mean, this is us saying best case scenario really with our blue tinted glasses, but obviously we would go undefeated for the rest of the season because we would never predict ourselves to lose. But that's 19 points out of 27 possible. So is that enough? That's the question. That puts us on 67, finishing on 67. I mean, 3 points in it between us and United. We don't have to play them again, so it's just a case of we have to equal or better their result every time. If we do that for the rest of the season, we'll be fine. But again, I don't know what their run-in's like. I haven't seen theirs. I felt confident before. I think before we went away, we just seemed to start finding a little bit of form. beat Everton at home 4-0, which, I mean, that Everton are a good side and great manager. So I was feeling confident, and then obviously the break now, you just don't know how the players are going to come back.
I've just pulled up the United run of games.
Yeah, go on.
So they've got Spurs away. So either Spurs or United will drop points on that.
Or both.
You've got Sheffield United at home, Brighton away, Bournemouth at home, Aston Villa away, Southampton at home, Crystal Palace away, West Ham at home, and Leicester away. So I mean,
say it's slightly better than ours, I would say, but not by a lot. I mean, what you've got Leicester still,
Spurs
Sheffield United still, Spurs. So they've got some tough games. I mean, we've still got the two best teams in the country to play, and we've got Wolves and Sheffield United who have had the seasons of their lives. So, I mean, I would say ours are just about tougher. But, they still have a few games where they could drop points. I mean, Spurs, they beat City twice, didn't they? They had a couple of brilliant games against City, so they could come to United and upset. Leicester, obviously. I mean, Sheffield United, less so, but
I think that's going to be the really important game there, because you've got Spurs as their first game back away, and both of you've got to try and build form against a big rival who could take your spot. Spurs being able to sort of jump ahead of United and maybe get Europa, and then potentially qualify for Champions League if they go through with the stuff with City. So they've got stuff to play for, and then they've got players back. So they've got Harry Kane, they've got that sort of stuff. And to be honest, I think Mourinho would love to do one over on United. He will throw as much as he can at that to make sure that happens, because he was disappointed when he came back to Chelsea with United and we did him over 4-0. He would not want the same to come back. United and your old club still do you over. So I think it's all still to play for. It's just there's a lot of factors that are just very strange. It's like having a very long winter break.
It was our first year of a winter break. It just got extended, didn't it?
It's like a Game of Thrones winter break. Sort of too long. But yeah, no, I think I've got a feeling we'll do it. I've got that feeling I think we could even challenge for third, in all honesty. But I can't there's still that gut feeling of not seeing them play for a while. I mean, even when you start a new season, you can watch them in pre-season and just get a feel for who's energetic, who's not, who's got that. You haven't got that feeling here. Everyone's coming in cold, and we're just going to watch as players come in. So
it's a shame we can't get Ziyech to come in and help us for the last few games of the season. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
I mean, we haven't even touched on Champions League. I mean, not that we've got a huge sort of opportunity there, but that's still to be decided of what's going on.
I think that'll be after. So I think they're planning to do some kind of like mini tournament at the end of it. I mean, to me, they should just wipe out the first legs and just start fresh. So
I mean,
15-minute five-a-side game, that'd be enough.
To be honest, though, watching Bayern, they don't look like they've dropped any form. And equally, they've got much longer to train for that. I mean, Lewandowski's still smashing them in. He scored more than he has last season in the current campaign. So I think
we've got the FA Cup as well.
Yeah, FA Cup.
We've got Leicester in that one. I think actually that's, from what I remember seeing, I think that's planned for the 27th of June. So that'll be the week after the first round of fixtures on the weekend. So that'll be an interesting one.
Slotted just between Aston Villa and City.
Yeah, I did see some the fixtures for the FA Cup actually, and I can't remember all of them, but I know that I think it's Arsenal, City, and United are in the other games. So that could potentially be semi-finals that we see all four of those teams in it. And you could be seeing some exciting games in the FA Cup as well.
So the point I haven't mentioned, but I think is a really important one, is if you look, since they've announced the Premier League's coming back, 6 players so far have tested positive for COVID. So at any point during the next run of games, you could have players off, self-isolating for 2 weeks of fixtures, any given point, and that player list could be. So they're obviously going to have to run testing before and after games just to make sure.
The thing is, though, if someone does test positive, they've all been in contact training. So if someone does, then they're going to have, that whole team's going to have to self-isolate. They won't be able to play. So, I mean, yeah, the season might still not finish, but they are obviously taking steps to.
Because I think you imagine if you're a Liverpool or a City and you've got Aguero who goes sort of out for 2 weeks with coronavirus, which can obviously happen in the normal sort of season. You can have someone go down with flu and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that can be sort of heart-wrenching, especially probably more at the bottom of the league, if I'm going to be honest. That's when certain players mean a lot more to that sort of club staying up, and that's just going to be interesting to watch. This season is going to be by far being normal as it closes out. But
it has been a strange one. I think I can't imagine we'll see a season like this ever again.
No.
And yeah, I mean, it'll be good for us when the season comes back because we'll have new things to talk about every week.
Yeah.
We can look at what the games that have been played and talk about how we played and what that means for us going forward. And we'll have lots more to talk about rather than having to think of all these cool new ideas for each week.
So on that point, interesting article that came up during the week. So Gianfranco, Chelsea legend, talking around the Sarri tenure, and it was an interesting one. I think sort of high hopes when he first started. He had a great run of games at the beginning. Great pedigree, come from Napoli, done very well. Lots of sort of plaudits from the likes of watching Pep Guardiola and those guys. Sort of really sort of almost sort of say, like, look at how good he plays football. And don't get me wrong, I was very much interested in it. I think a lot of Chelsea fans struggled with Sarri because he's stubborn.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, a manager is allowed to be stubborn if they want to, but when you have the world's best player in his position being purposely played out that position for a player you've brought in and very much favour above all other players, it created a lot of friction between the fans and the manager, in my opinion. And that's why, in all honesty, I don't think it was as successful as it could have been. I think he could have been a brilliant manager if he just listened to the fans a little bit. But I'll get your thoughts on what you thought of the article, because it's interesting, and you could probably watch it from seeing the players play under his tenure. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously Zola said that some of the players got bored of Sarri's philosophy throughout the season. I mean, I was in the same boat as you when Sarri first came in. I was quite excited. You heard Pep talking about brilliant football that Sarri played over at Napoli, and I kind of was thinking, it's been ages since we've had a manager who is playing good football. We've always been that defensive team or the counter-attacking team. So I was thinking, I'd love to see us play nice football. We didn't play nice football. We played boring football. It was horrible. The passing, just for the sake of it, it was, I mean, you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to emulate the Barcelona of old. But we didn't really have the players to do that.
No.
I mean, Jorginho, he's like a metronome for Napoli. He gets the ball, he passes the ball, gets the ball, he passes the ball. But it's not exciting to watch, and it didn't work for Chelsea. He came to the Premier League expecting that it was all going to work perfectly, and as soon as it didn't work, which I remember the first game that it didn't work and we could see it didn't work was against Spurs away, and we got battered. And Jorginho was just played off the park by getting my man marked from Dele Alli and Son. The whole game, one of them was on him, and he couldn't do his thing, and we just capitulated.
Yeah.
And what did he do? He decided to carry on. And fine, you've got your philosophy, but you need to be adaptable as a football manager. what you're doing is not working, don't carry on doing the same thing. You got to try something different. Do what you can to win. And he didn't have that mentality.
You look at the real sort of top managers. They've never been able to do the same in different leagues and in the same way. So Pep and his tenure at Barca had a completely different team, different players, different ethos than when he moved to Bayern. And equally now he's at City. So recognising he's got a good ethos, but he's not used the same playbook in each place. He's recognised what's worked, what hasn't worked, and has adapted as he's gone along. I think Sarri came with sort of a playbook that was just going to be used and sort of driven off that. And I think he saw what Conte happened, because Conte had the same mentality, but it was something completely different to the league. So Conte came in at 5 at the back, 3 in the middle, and 2 up top. But you had it worked. It worked for some strange reason. Conte's system worked. I mean, who would have thought putting sort of Alonso and Victor Moses as wing backs would have been a title-winning decision? But I think Sarri came in. He changed it, and everyone had it. Everyone knew it. It was almost like teacher's pet or the coach's son being Jorginho. And people recognised that you could play him off the park. As you rightly said, once you reckon you marked him, it pretty much ruined our game, because everyone was trying to pass through him to get to seeing how we moved it, and it didn't work. And actually now I look at Jorginho this season, he's been a player who's been accepted because he's not being picked because he's Jorginho, he's been picked because of his form. And equally, some of the plays he's doing, because he's been played out of the position, have been much better than he has it's not playing just boring sort of side-to-side football. It's pinging that pass to Tammy and getting that amazing sort of ball. Yeah. And I'm not saying he wouldn't have done that under Sarri, but I could see also a lot of players getting bored, that recognising that the system's not working, being forced to do that system, and getting frustrated as that they know it's not the right thing to do. And it was a great point. I mean, I'm following the Italian league as much as I probably should, but I'm not sure. I mean, with the checkbook he's got behind him at Juve and the players he's got on that pitch, I don't think he's still doing as well as he should be.
No, but I think he's, by the looks of it, he's looking to bring Jorginho back with him to Juventus, because he can't seem. I don't think he can play his game without a player who does that. I mean, I can't really think of many others who do the same thing as Jorginho. I mean, you could look to a Pirlo of old, but there's not really many who do it as well as Jorginho does it. But at the same time, I think even if he does bring Jorginho in, he's going to try and implement the same thing over there, which it's been found out in the Premier League. So you've got someone like Conte, who obviously will keep tabs on what's going on in the Premier League, and he'll see how to unstick that. And he's just going to put 2 man marking Jorginho next season when they come up against Juventus, and Sarri's going to fail again.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing there is it worked at Napoli because it wasn't the biggest club in the league. I mean, they're a big club, but you're not going to study them that much in comparison to a Juve or a Chelsea, because they're like the giant killers. You watch those people with sort of such fine detail that you recognise the weaknesses and you can therefore mitigate against those. You can't do that. Sort of, you could get away with that in Napoli. You can't get away with that with a Juve, especially if you've got that sort of talent. I mean, they've got far too much talent for one club there, and I've been sort of banging that drum for a while. So any deal that we get for Jorginho, I'll be expecting some talent in return, whether that be Dybala or Adrian Rabiot. I'll take most of those players because they're being wasted at a club like that. But yeah, I was. He was sort of one of those managers that had high expectations and it fell a lot shorter. Whereas
and very quickly as well.
And Lampard has been the opposite this season. As much as he is a Chelsea legend, the expectations weren't high. With everything weighted against him, and he's really surpassed that expectation. But interesting to see a lot of players got bored with his mentality. I think it was sort of, from reading the articles, it seems to be practicing the same thing over and over again. And obviously with practice comes perfection. Obviously never making it professional myself, even with this athletic body.
I don't know how you didn't, to be honest. Like, I've seen you play football, and it is a spectacle.
Exactly. I may not bring the best football, but I bring definitely an air of entertainment. Whether that's good entertainment or not, who knows?
Like a giraffe on ice skates.
I mean, yeah. But I think that's the thing for me is with that perfection, it's brilliant. But if you're boring your best players, they do this as a job, but they also do it because they love doing it. And most of them are amazing at doing those little things already. They know where they need to improve. Managing the particulars like that, it wastes a lot of those players. And I think that you can see. You've got creative players like Willian and Hazard, that if you get them to practice as a squad passing, it's like, why are you doing that? When actually, where their benefits are, they'll do that in their own time. They'll do that practice late on. But what they want to do is compete. They want to compete with, sort of take on those other players, because we've got world-class defenders. They want to make sure they can go around those defenders and do it in different ways. And equally, those defenders want to make sure they can defend against someone like Hazard, because it's the best player they could have possibly come up against. So if they can beat him, they can beat anyone. So I'm not surprised, to be honest, with Gianfranco's comments. I
think with my overall kind of assessment on Sarri, he could have brought his philosophy to Chelsea, and it could have worked if he was a bit more flexible with it. So you can still have a philosophy in football and play a different formation. You don't have to play 4-3-3 to play your style of football. I mean, Pep is one example of someone who's changed his formation based on the players he's got, but he still has the same philosophy, which is pass and move quick and keeping that possession and slowly moving up the pitch as a group. He goes out and spends big money on the right players, but he adapts as well. Yeah. He uses what he's got and fills gaps with players that he knows can do a job. Whereas Sarri, he had to bring in Jorginho to even try to get it to work, but he wouldn't change from that formation. I mean, if he tried to get that formation to work with a 5 at the back system, that would have probably worked quite well, because we had the players there for a 5 at the back system. You could have had Jorginho in the hole, and then you still got your wide players and your striker and another midfielder in there. He could have got that to work, but he was just too rigid, and he wanted to play his way. He wanted his 4-3-3 and nothing else.
And I think, in hindsight, personally, I'm sort of glad he didn't work out, because watching Lampard come in and seeing these young players come through, it's been a breath of fresh air. And I think we could have had another 5-10 years of buying players and not necessarily bringing through talent. And I think it was that great time to do that. So, conscious, obviously, it comes to the end of it, and I think it was an interesting one for me. So, for those of you guys who didn't see it, BBC did a really good thing on their website around the top Chelsea team based on their Premier League winners, which is effectively the Abramovic era. And myself and JB decided to go through who would be our top team of the Abramovic era. So what we'll do is take you through that, and we'd love to hear in the comment section your updates around this or your changes. But what we'll do, Jamie, if we go position by position, so I've gone for a 4-3-3 for mine.
Yeah, I did as well. With the exact same.
If we go through position by position, I think we'll probably have a lot of overlap, because we've had some really good pedigree, but there are some standout performances here. And just talk through while we do it really quickly. So if we start with the goalkeeper, I think I'd be very surprised if you've chosen someone other than Petr Cech. I mean, when I first started supporting Chelsea Carlo Cudicini was my idol until Cech came through. I mean, Cech was just different class. I think coming from Belgrade, he was meant to be a great player, but I think he's probably been one of our signings of the Abramovic era for that amount of money, and to have that good of a pedigree between the sticks. I mean, obviously with the horrific sort of thing that happened, he still came back as world-class keeper. I mean, near the end of his career, the role of a keeper started to change. But for me, best keeper by far we've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I remember his first game for Chelsea. It was Mourinho's first as well. And we just signed this new goalkeeper, but we still had Cudicini. And I remember that almost the whole pre-season, everyone was discussing, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Cudicini? Is it going to be Cech? And he went with Cech, and we never looked back from then until, what was it, 2016, something like that, he left? Or 2015. We never looked back. He was just unbelievable for us.
He was the only position on the whole pitch that was first on that. You would never have chosen anyone else. I mean, as much as I love Cudicini was definitely a previous era signing. He was one of those players that was a brilliant sort of understudy, but not a world-class keeper. And I couldn't fault Cech. I mean, his later part of the career when we brought in Courtois, you could see that you had a new keeper coming through, and we wanted to try and keep that, make sure we didn't lose talent like Courtois as Cech was getting older.
Yeah.
For his prime, I couldn't have asked for a better keeper.
No, and I absolutely love the guy. I mean, just obviously the Champions League final, it's just, he dived correctly every single penalty, and I don't just mean the shootout. Remember, he saved the penalty in extra time as well, and he dived correctly every single penalty in the shootout as well, and that just, for me, he was a legend automatically. He was anyway, but I just love to talk about that because it just shows what a man he is. And if you ever see any interviews with anyone about the two Champions League finals, so I think it was Drogba when they were. It was like a documentary about the 2012 win, and I think it was John Terry, and he was saying that when they got to Moscow for the 2008 final, Petr Cech was, I don't like this. I don't like this. Why? What's wrong? Everything's red. The tickets are red. The program's red. Everything's dressed up in red. Man United were playing against them. They're in red, and we lost it. And then when we went to Munich, all of the Champions League stuff was all blue. Everything was blue, and Cech was delighted with it. And John Terry, I remember him saying, if Big Pete's happy, I'm happy.
So back four, we'll go through all of these in one. So I've gone with Ivanovic, Terry, Carvalho, and Cole. Personally, because I can't think of a better back four than those four. Ivanovic, probably one of the best right backs I've ever seen, simply because not only was he brilliant defensively, he wasn't sort of a traditional wing back that you would have seen nowadays, but could go forward and score. I mean, he was a mainstay within my fantasy football team for a number of years, but amazing at the role he did. And up until we left, absolutely sort of would have been on top of my list for keeping him there.
I actually didn't go for Ivanovic.
Really?
No, I went for Big Dave Azpilicueta.
And it was difficult to leave Dave out.
Yeah, it was difficult for me not to pick Branner, but I think Azpilicueta, Ivanovic was good in that team. I think if you'd put him in another team, would he have been as good as he was at Chelsea? I don't know. But I tell you now, if Azpilicueta was at any other team in the Premier League, he would have been just as good. He is an absolute top quality defender. He was always in the right position. I'm saying was because he's not quite got the same legs as he used to. But even to his testament, he's still in that team now, and he's been keeping James out for a little while. So that says it all, really. He's a top professional. He's never put a foot wrong, and I've always admired just his defensive work. It's just absolutely fantastic.
I think you completely agree with you because it was really difficult to leave Dave out. I was actually considering switching Dave with Carvalho because I do love Branner a lot. But for me, Dave has been amazing. I think sort of probably I'm looking at it more from current Dave rather than Dave of old. But what you've got from both those players is very versatile right backs. Could play centre back, could play right back, and have done us a great job going forward. Now, I'd be really surprised if you've switched anything from Terry because he is.
Yeah, no.
He's been. I mean, there's not much we can say
Mr.
about
Chelsea, isn't he?
He's Mr. Chelsea. I mean,
captain, leader, legend.
I know. So I watched an interview with him a couple of days back, and he's waiting for the time in which he can come back and manage us.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's done the right thing. To be honest, I think Frank's had a good run, but I think he needs a bit more time at Aston Villa, mature into a manager rather than jump straight into the management role. But for me, best centre back we've ever had.
Yes, Compton.
I've gone with Carvalho next.
And so did I.
I think personally, if we're talking around Mourinho in his prime, not Mourinho of old and sort of the last couple of seasons where he's just really lost it, bringing in him from it just sort of was a perfect partnership for Terry. Really good player, had a good head switched on, and for a number of seasons, just you couldn't unlock our defence. I think so many seasons where no one was able to sort of win at Stamford Bridge. Primarily that's because of Terry and Carvalho.
And I used to love how he'd shave his head at the beginning of the season, and then he'd just leave it to grow for the whole season. And by the end of it, it was coming down to here. It was, I used to love that. It's not the only reason I picked him, but
he was doing lockdown far beyond. Ashley Cole. Now, for me, obviously, Arsenal fans hated it, which means I loved it even more that he came to us. But for me, he was one of the best left backs I've ever seen. He owned that role. It was. I remember watching him with games when he had Ronaldo in his pocket, just sort of Ronaldo at the start of his career in his prime in his pocket, and we've really missed that left back position for a number of years. We've not been able to replace a Cole, and I think we spoke in our last podcast. We're looking at that next role, and I don't think we've got it yet, but I think we will eventually. But
the thing about Ashley Cole, he was just like a silent operator. Like he was obviously good, and he would go about his business to do it, but he never made a mistake. Really, you never saw him make an error. He was just so reliable. He was good going forward. Even now, I think he would be not with his legs now, but if he came into this generation of football and was as a left back now in his prime, I think he would tear it up. I think he'd still be one of the best because the style of left back that he was is exactly what the fullbacks play now. That wing back, he was brilliant going forwards. He didn't score many goals, but his crossing ability was fantastic. I think he'd be the best left back in the world if in his prime. If he was playing now, I think he'd be the best left back in the world by far.
He was when he was there. He was best left back in my eyes. The only other person you had was Roberto Carlos, and he was a very different left back to him at the time. Cole for me, every day of the week. Mm-hmm. So midfield, I've gone with a very defensively minded midfield, but it's probably because we've had the best defensively minded midfield in a long time. And I could have picked other players, and there are lots of honourable mentions, but I've gone with Lampard, Kante and Makelele. So Lampard for obvious reasons. Personally, because he is my favourite player of all time. He is not only is he doing amazing things as manager now, goal scoring ability, ran that midfield, could shoot from 30 yards, and you'd pretty much guarantee it was going in. So I'd be surprised if we've got differing on Lampard. I don't know if you got anything else to add with that, but he was a man, legend.
What can you say about Lamps? The only thing I would say is would you have classed him as a attacking midfielder or just a central midfielder?
I always had him now as an attacking midfielder.
So did I, but when I look back, I'd say he's more of a box-to-box.
Oh, yeah.
Which is where I've put him, but I'd say he's, I always thought of him as a cam, as it would be these days, but he was a full-on box-to-box.
I think that's the issue that England had for a long time, is you had so many of those players that could do all the things. Like, if you just had a Lampard or had been a Gerrard or a Scholes, it's very difficult to try and set those players together because they could do all of those. They could all be of a cam, or they could all have been a box-to-box midfielder. That's another conversation for another day. Makelele and Kante, very, very similar players, so you wouldn't necessarily play them in the same team. But Makelele made the CDM role. When we brought him in, another masterclass. He became a mainstay on our field, and he did what every modern team looks for. No other team really has a Makelele style player. If you say CDM, people usually associate it with Makelele, and he created the role, and I think that's why he was so amazing for us. But Kante sort of made the role. I think you had one player who created it and another player that's made it, and that's why I put those two in there, because Makelele for me, he allowed Lampard to go forward so often. Yeah. He allowed us to have the other sort of amazing midfielders that haven't made it into this team so far to play around him, and I think Kante's done exactly the same for us. I don't know if you've got any different.
Yeah, so for me, I could only pick either Makelele or Kante. I was in an hour, and I really couldn't decide which one to go for, because as you said, you would play them in the same team. So I was kind of thinking I'll pick one. I went for Kante because I think he just offers a little bit more than Makelele did. I think he does the same things as Makelele, but I think he offers a bit more on top of that as well. Yeah. We only saw Makelele for his twilight years. He came in at the end, so his legs probably weren't as good as they used to be when he was younger. So we didn't see that side of him. But just in terms of their Chelsea years, Kante would, for me, is just a bit better suited to play there. So instead, my third one is SEM. Oh. So there was a multiple number of central midfielders I could have picked. We'll actually, I've written a few honourable mentions down. We'll talk about later, but SEN, just an absolute powerhouse. Again, he was really meant to be a holding midfielder to replace Makelele, but he wasn't. He was a beast. He was like a preview to what Yaya Toure became in the Premier League. And he was more like a box-to-box midfielder, and he just had it all. His passing, his tackling, his shooting, everything you would want from a midfielder he could do. Yeah. And he was just, again, he was one of those which would just, he's in the team. There's no arguments for that. He would always be in that starting 11. Every year he was at Chelsea. Towards the end, he started to fade out. We even loaned him out to Real Madrid, I think, for a season. But no, to me, I think he's also a Chelsea legend. I think he was superb. It's a shame he didn't win the Champions League with us. Yeah. That's he's probably disappointed as well, because there's a couple of years we should have done it. But I loved SEM.
Oh, SEM was amazing. Used to love watching him play, and I think especially seeing, the goals he scored, which he never should have scored. The Arsenal goal,
yeah,
the goal, all that sort of stuff. Where a player like that, years ago, you expected him to be in the same sort of like of Kante and Makelele, but he was just completely different. And I think we've been blessed, especially in our generation, of the midfielders that Chelsea have brought through. You look at that season, we had the Balaks, the Decos, and you're just sort of watching that again. How have you managed to fit that many amazing midfielders into one squad and work?
Yeah. It's like now, though, isn't it? This is what we're trying to do now. And all of those players.
You watch as Real Madrid try and do that, and they never can bring that much talent and get it to work. Somehow Mourinho did. So that was my midfield. And I mean, to be honest, this was a very easy front three for me. So I went with Hazard, Drogba, and Robben.
So do I. So.
Drogba for very, very obvious reasons. He is, I think, sort of, if I was going to say it, sort of Terry, Lampard, Drogba, Cech. Those four.
And Cole, probably, as well.
And Cole. Those are players who will always be remembered, not only for 2012, but for just what they provide the club. Absolute immense. I mean, Drogba as a player, we have been searching for a striker of a similar sort of nature and not be able to find it. I remember watching Drogba in his first season. He didn't hit the ground running when he came straight from Marseille, but watching just the immense power, I think it's the only way I put it. A player that you could ping a ball, and he wasn't just a target man. He was a player that controlled the ball and was able to take on every other player going forward, barge them off, immense strength, immense shooting capability, poacher strength, header. He had it all.
Free kicks.
As a striker, if I could sign him again today, I would. That's the sort of player we look for. Now, the other two, Hazard, for obvious reasons, he has been a magician. We signed him. We were very fortunate to go and sign him from Lille. A lot of other clubs looking for him. He matured at Chelsea. And I think he had his off seasons and his good seasons. I think he had some seasons where he chose not to play. And that's, I think, his only drawback is he's complacent sometimes. He's not necessarily, he'll play when he wants to play, but when he switches it on, he properly switches it on. And I think we'll always remember that. And I think there's still more to come from him. So I think for both Robben and Hazard, they left Chelsea too early.
I'd say Robben did. I think Hazard probably gave us his best years. I do think he's got more to give, but
who will give it?
Yeah, I really think he's got his dream move now, and then from that point, it's just going to just decline. I mean, given his age as well, for a winger, he's getting to that point where it can start to deteriorate. So I do think he probably gave us his best years. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd still have him now, but I think he could have gone 2-3 years ago easily and gone to a Barcelona or a Real Madrid. Even 2 years ago. So I think he definitely gave us longer than he probably wanted to. Robben definitely was too early, but that was one of those where he always wanted to use Chelsea as a stepping stone. Chelsea still wasn't a massive club at that point. We're a big team, we'd won the Premier League, but we still wasn't up there with, like the Man United and the Real Madrid and the Liverpools and the Barcelonas. But a few years later, we became that kind of, that stature of club. But maybe not on the same level as Real Madrid or Man United. But I think he needed to go at that point. I think I remember hearing there was some kind of problems in the dressing room with him as well. So that was, and he was quite injury prone as well. He was injured quite a lot.
He's had an exciting career, but for me, I definitely agree. I think he gave his best years to us. I think it's interesting with Hazard. I think you're right. I think 29 for a player that's worth 100 million is quite an old age. I think Ronaldo's a different class when you talk around in that space. But there's even talks, just sort of Googling it down, that Real Madrid may offer Hazard for Mbappe, which would be a monumental loss. And I think Hazard would take that quite personally.
I think he'd be devastated by that. He's, always wanted to play for Real Madrid. I don't think he'd be against playing for PSG, but I think he would rather do it on his own terms. I think he'd rather have at least another year at Real Madrid before. Because remember, being from Belgium, French football is quite big over there. So he's probably also had dreams of playing for PSG. So it could have something in it. And I don't think he'd be happy about it, but I don't think he'd also just like poo-poo the idea either.
And I think for me, it's. Just going by the squad that we've put there. I mean, three of the probably most exciting attacking players we've ever had at the club.
Oh.
And I mean, Drogba, Hazard, Robben. I mean,
you imagine that 11 in the Premier League.
In their
clean
prime,
up, quadruple.
That would have been, yeah.
Comfortably win the quadruple of that 11.
Yeah, I think some of those 11 were definitely cheated of near enough that many a time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Abramovic has come in. He's completely changed Chelsea. I mean, I remember my first ever Chelsea game, going to watch Chelsea at home to Fulham, and us scraping a 1-1 draw, and watching Gianfranco have to come on and change our sort of fortunes on that. But just watched it's nearly 20 years now since he's come in. Obviously, a few years off that yet, but 20 years since he's come in, I think he's changed us so much for the better. We are considered a European elite. We are expected to win Premier Leagues, Champions Leagues, FA Cups, League Cups. We attract amazing talent, and we're now building a lot of good talent. And I think it's done us a lot of good. And yeah, I think it's I think it'll be a long stay for at least the next couple of years. I do worry
there's been rumours about takeovers and him not wanting to keep hold of Chelsea because of the visa issues that he's had. I wouldn't be surprised to see him hand it down to his son. His son, has been coming to Chelsea the whole time. He loves the club also. So, what better thing to hand that down to your son than a team that he supports now, because he's been a Chelsea fan for the majority of his life. So
I wouldn't mind that myself, to be honest.
Yeah.
What do you get?
As long as he gives him the money along with it.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that I'd love to see going forward, is we just try and be a bit more self-sufficient. So in the case of something happening, being able to make sure that we are capable of still competing at that level, but equally being self-sufficient would be key. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot more to come, and I think, to be honest, if we were to replay this in a couple of years' time, I definitely think some of the talent that's coming through now will start to break through across that. I think your Gilmours, your Mason Mounts, your Tammys, give it time, and they'll be part of that sort of that sort of era. I think we're entering our next era, to be honest now. Abramovich still, but more Abramovich long-term Chelsea.
Abramovich Mark II.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably see less big money signings, and we'll bring more stuff through, but we'll see the right sort of big money signings.
Yeah, clever signings. Not Bakayokos for 40 million. Danny Drinkwater for 30 million.
I think people will be less likely to go and sign that, because both of those players, we have the talent in our academy to go and fix. And it's quite rightly, you've seen both those sort of styles of plays in Mason Mount and Billy Gilmour walk into the first team above and beyond those sorts of players. They've got no heart for the club, and they're not good anyway. But yeah, no, I think it's positive, mate. And I think sort of we'll wait till next week to see a little bit more around what's coming around for the actual sort of rest of the league, and then we'll also probably do an update to some of the transfer rumours coming through, because some interesting ones.
Yeah, I think stuff is starting to move, so there should be more news around transfers. And hopefully we'll have more of an idea of when games are going to be played, more around who's going to be playing, because I mean, Kante, as we said, he's not going to play, but he is back in training now. So he's not no contact training, but he's there. So he might have a change of heart. You never know. Let's hope. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in again. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we hope to see you next week.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys.